The International Criminal Court has taken statements from over 1 million Afghanis as to crimes that have been committed against them by both the Taliban and US-backed forces inside the country. However, according to that same study, it seems very unlikely that the US will be held accountable for its crimes. The ICC opened up an investigation into the situation in Afghanistan last November and began collecting testimonies with the help of organizations working both in Europe and Afghanistan. Up to January 31st, the ICC received 1.17 million allegations of abuses and atrocities at the hands of the Taliban, the Islamic State, Afghan security forces, warlords, US-led coalition, as well as foreign and domestic intelligence agencies. Now, Abdul Pedram, who is the head of the Kabul-based Human Rights Eradication of Violence organization, says that the problems inside the country are actually getting worse. The culture of impunity from law is expanding, unfortunately, in Afghanistan. The presence of warlords and human rights abusers is extensive right now, and the ICC need to provide an answer to the demand of millions of people who are victims and have suffered. Now, back in November, the ICC described some of the offenses committed by the US and US-backed forces. A reasonable basis to believe that members of the U.S. Armed Forces and members of the CIA committed acts of torture, cruel treatment, outrages upon personal dignity, rape, and sexual violence. Americans bombed villages, they bombed wedding parties, and that's one kind of crime. Another type of crime occurs when Afghan security forces enter villages and kill people without identifying whether the people there are armed and against the government. They are just simple people living in the village. Now, of course, the United States denies any wrongdoing, even though there is overwhelming proof that U.S. forces, not even just U.S.-backed forces, but U.S. forces have committed terrible human rights abuses inside of the country. And in fact, U.S. soldiers have been charged and convicted of having committed crimes, yet the United States maintains that their hands are free of any crimes against the Afghani people in the about a decade and a half long occupation of the country. Now, it's very obvious that the United States will never be brought to court for the crimes that it has been committed against the Afghani people, and not just them, but Iraq, Syria, and all the countries around the world which currently suffer as a result of the U.S. building its own empire. I mean, it doesn't take really much of a political insider to realize that in order to hold the United States accountable for its crimes, you would have to have some kind of military force enter the country and forcibly remove those criminals from their homes to bring them to the international courts to be prosecuted for their crimes. In other words, it's not going to happen. There's a great deal of people within the U.S. government and formerly with the U.S. government that currently have warrants for their arrest for the crimes that they've committed during various acts of war, including Henry Kissinger, George W. Bush, and probably very soon, former U.S. President Barack Obama. But we know that these people are not going to be held accountable so long as the United States continues to hold its military hegemonic position within the world. And all of this, all the people that have suffered, the crimes that have been committed by people, the rapes, the tortures, all the things that were carried out by the CIA and by the U.S. military, has all been done for the purpose of building a U.S. empire. Now, of course, this goes completely against what we're told, that this is about the hearts and minds of people. This is about saving them from whatever threat it is that has been imagined, that being the Taliban was responsible for 9/11, even though the hijackers were Saudi, the weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein supposedly had, or the supposed human rights crimes that were committed by Muammar Gaddafi, or the chemical weapons that were supposedly used by Bashar al-Assad inside of Syria. There's always some kind of pretext for the U.S. trying to act like some kind of tremendous human rights champion in the world, when in fact the U.S. is one of the largest human rights abusers that has ever existed in history. Now, there is a big question as to who has actually been worse, the Japanese Empire, the British Empire, or the U.S. Empire, as to which one has done the most destruction to humanity. But despite that ongoing contest, it is very clear that it is the U.S. empire that holds a hegemonic position right now, and it is the one that is going across the world creating all of this suffering. And it is very unfortunate that the day in which the leaders of the U.S. and even its foot soldiers will be held accountable for its crimes is probably a day that is never going to come.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.